Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. A little bit of a football renaissance going down in central New York as Fran Brown started to cook a little bit in the transfer portal, landing one of the more coveted quarterbacks out of the portal and former Ohio State quarterback, Kyle McCord, a guy we've talked about a lot and just kind of gets a bad narrative. Like you look at Kyle McCord and what he did in the 2023 season, over 3,000 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, went 11-1, with his one loss being on the road to the number one team in the country, only by 6 points. Syracuse had one of the poorest passing attacks in all of the country last year. You take a look at what Fran Brown is doing in the transfer portal. That is going to change immediately in 2024. Big fan of Kyle McCord and coming over to Syracuse, and even a bigger fan of the hire Fran Brown, because it seems like things are picking up for this Syracuse program. As a Rochester native, the boys absolutely love to see it. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. There has been a ton of support from all of you guys in the transfer portal, talking about all these roster moves. Fran Brown starting to heat up a program that I think we're going to be talking a lot about over the next couple weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, going to kick this one off to you. Fran Brown starting to cook. Kyle McCord coming over to Syracuse. How are we feeling?
Yeah, and frankly, I'm looking at this like transfer portal ranking. He's QB 10 according to 24/7. I'm not gonna lie. I think a lot of that has to do with Ryan Day and just the Ohio State fans in general. Just they were looking for a scapegoat. Okay, why'd they lose to Michigan? Why? And you've seen that every year Ohio State loses to Michigan. They want to find the reason, and somebody gets blamed. And this year was Kyle McCord, but you watch what he's done most of the season, and even in the Michigan game, he threw one bad interception, but he's been really, really good all year. I don't get this, oh, you can't win with a guy like Kyle McCord. He's average. He's this. He's a really, really good quarterback.
I 100% agree. And I think that, yes, is Kyle McCord, and do I understand some of the sentiment for Ohio State fans and saying, was Kyle McCord Justin Fields or CJ Stroud? Probably not, but those guys were some of the best quarterbacks we've seen at the college football level in the last couple of years. Kyle McCord, that doesn't take away from Kyle McCord being an extremely good quarterback. And again, shredding to Nebraska, we were big fans of that potential move. And then you look at Syracuse and where they were with the quarterback position, playing all sorts of quarterbacks in 2023 and all the injuries that they had to endure with the wide receivers and the quarterback position. Kyle McCord's a guy that, and there was a reason he was a top 50 national prospect coming out of high school. He's a big body with a big arm that's going to make all the throws that you ask him to make.
And he's going to steady the ship. I mean, that's really what you want, a stability, a guy who's going to probably play all 12 games and just give you the type of production you need to be a competitive football team. And when you compare that to like what Syracuse had or what some of these other teams like in Nebraska had last year, he's such a monster upgrade. It's not just that he's a good quarterback in his own right, but when you're going from like, again, what you kind of say, like some of the worst quarterback play in like the Power 5 world to a guy who's really, really solid. And again, I think is severely underrated because of what the Ohio State narrative came out with him. And that was a lot driven by the Ohio State coaches and fans. But I think this guy can play. And I think, again, you'll see it even exacerbated for a team like Syracuse where you just didn't have any.
It's hard to find good quarterbacks at the college football level. Let's just be straight up. There's about like 20 good. I mean, there's a few elite guys and there's a lot of like really solid guys. And that's probably where I'm putting Kyle McCord. Like if you win this starting quarterback position at Ohio State, you're a good quarterback because that was a loaded room with a lot of talent. So you look at Kyle McCord and he is a upper tier quarterback at the college football level. And again, am I putting him up there with CJ Stroud and Justin Fields? No, but from where Syracuse had in 2023 to what they're going to get in 2024 from Kyle McCord, like you have to be so excited about what this offense is going to look like. And like kind of pivoting the conversation, the transfer portal is massive for first-year head coaches. I mean, like pre-transfer portal era, Fran Brown's coming in, probably looking at this quarterback room and saying, there's going to be some growing pains because the quarterback position just wasn't good enough. The transfer portal exists. Fran Brown is able to kind of retool this roster immediately so he can have success year one. This was a team that went 6-6 with not good quarterback play. And what's this team going to look like with like really solid quarterback play and Kyle McCord? And they're doing some work in the transfer portal around the quarterback spot as well.
Well, and I think the transfer portal is especially beneficial to a guy like Fran Brown, who's then able to bring in like Coach Elijah Robinson from Texas A&M. When you can get these guys from these big time schools, I'm a little surprised, frankly, and you mentioned this before the show, that more teams aren't trying this, because you see who Fran Brown and Coach Elijah Robinson, who they're able to go after in the portal. I mean, they're getting some big names on campus. Fidel Diggs coming in. They've got like a couple of Georgia and A&M guys already committed from the portal, like super talented guys. Maybe they were on the 2 deep or 3 deep at Georgia, but those guys are monster upgrades for what Syracuse had. And I don't think this is going to be over. I mean, the relationships Coach Brown has, the relationship Coach Robinson has, like they should be in the running for a lot of really good players out of that area. Like, let's just say
the relationships. And I'm surprised more. I think you might see more schools give this a shot. If Fran Brown
Syracuse kills it, then watch out, Georgia. Texas.
You go out and get these like head coaches, up and coming head coaches, and I'm not saying those are bad hires, but if you're a Syracuse program, why not take a shot on a young elite recruiter that has proven the ability? Fran Brown was probably one of the best recruiters in the entire country at the college football level. And at the end of the day, college football is a talent acquisition sport. If you are able to acquire talent, the chances of you winning football games is going to be extremely high. So albeit Fran Brown has no head coaching experience, it makes a lot of sense for Syracuse to take a stab at a guy with a ton of upside because you know he can recruit. You already look at what he's doing in the transfer portal. Zeed Haynes, Jackson Meeks coming over from Georgia. I mean, those guys are starting caliber wide receivers for Syracuse immediately. And you look at Kyle McCord, massive upgrade at the quarterback spot. Zeed Haynes, Jackson Meeks, guys who are extremely talented and are able to get this passing attack going. I mean, if Fran Brown is able to get maybe 10 to 15 more transfers in the portal coming from schools like Georgia or Texas A&M, I mean, just from a talent standpoint, this Syracuse program is going to be meaningfully better than it was in 2023 or 2022 under Coach Dino.
And that's what you know. So, that this team's going to be talented. And I guess to get into that question, why not maybe take a guy who's kind of proven more at the head coaching level? I suppose the question will be player development. Because, again, you look at the Syracuse team, that's going to be a huge part of what they do. Probably going to need to be able to recruit under the radar guys, although if they get this going, who knows? But you need to be able to do that at any level. And that's probably the one knock. But again, if Fran Brown gets this going quickly at Syracuse, I think you can see this snowball a little better where, again, he doesn't necessarily – he's got the opportunity to go show up at a 4-star's house and say, look, we got something going at Syracuse. It's not your same old Syracuse. It's not the Syracuse of old where, no 4-star or very few 4-stars are going to give it a look. If he can get it rolling in the transfer portal, as we're seeing already, as we've seen with other coaches, allows you to do that. That's to me such a winning formula for what Fran Brown can do. So I think this
in the Fran Brown development standpoint, I mean, he's coming from
pros.
He's coming from the Georgia Bulldogs. There hasn't been a program that's developed more talent than Georgia the last couple of years, especially in that back end. When you take a look, they're probably going to send 4 or 5 guys to the NFL draft in that defensive backs room, the position that he was coaching at Georgia. So even from a player development standpoint, I think you feel pretty decent about Fran
I would
Brown.
Feel great. I have a hunch that's what the ADs are like. Yeah, that's why Fran Brown and that type of hire isn't made. And all the credit in the world to Syracuse for trying to do something a little different.
I'm fired up about it because it's this is I think unlocks a higher upside to the Syracuse program. And yes, is there a question about is he able to get it together, right? It's his first head coaching job at the college football level.
And he wasn't even again, you go back, he really wasn't a big time coordinator at a huge school. And that's again, you typically see where the coaches are hired. But again, we've kind of seen it. Maybe this tried and true method that all these ADs like to rely on, maybe that's on it. Maybe it's worth, again, I love taking a risk. Why not try to be really, really good instead of settling for mediocrity, which Syracuse has been doing, it feels like, for a long time.
I think that's probably a large story of why you go with Fran Brown. Dino had this program and it just kind of felt like they were bumping their head, and then it obviously started going downhill. You kind of had to make a move. Fran Brown, I think, takes that ceiling and says, "Hey, we're gonna elevate this ceiling because we can recruit better." And Fran Brown, again, one of, if not the best recruiter in all of college football. And let's just take a look at what he's been able to do in terms of momentum on the recruiting trail talking about another guy in the transfer portal, Fadil Diggs. This is a guy that is sought after by Syracuse, or not Syracuse, by Alabama and other SEC programs transferring from Texas A&M. We watched Fadil Diggs a lot in 2023. This dude is a great football player. And what does Fran Brown do? And Coach Elijah Robinson, they got another just stud recruiter as their defensive coordinator.
They got two absolute great. I just love those two together.
Hammers. And so it's like all of a sudden you're in it for a guy like Fadil Diggs, who's considered one of the best players in all of the transfer portal. This just kind of shows you like the momentum and the attraction that Fran Brown, Coach Elijah Robinson can have on the recruiting trail here.
And I don't think it should be done. I'd be really surprised as you see guys come out from Georgia and all these colleges, again, even like teams like Florida or Florida State, where Fran Brown and Elijah Robinson were no doubt battling for recruits, and maybe a couple went elsewhere. Like they have a deep bench of guys I have no doubt they have great relationships with, and maybe if they're not going to quite crack it at their other school, it's like come on over here, let's go win some games at a place where you haven't been doing a whole lot of winning.
That's probably the biggest, like the relationship building. You know what I mean? For the last 3 to 4 years, for both Coach Robinson and Fran Brown, they've developed these relationships. And so like a guy like King Joseph Edwards, who's one of the better players in the state of Georgia, was considering going to Georgia, had that really good relationship with Fran Brown. Now all of a sudden, where does King Joseph Edwards want to go play his football? At Syracuse. And even like the selling points are a little bit better. It's like, one, you have that relationship with me as a coach. Two, you're probably going to play early at Syracuse. You weren't probably going to play that early for the Georgia Bulldogs. So a guy like King Joseph Edwards, a high 4-star, he's also considering Syracuse. You go down the list, a guy like Marcellus Barnes from the state of Tennessee, he's also a guy that had a really good relationship with Fran Brown. Georgia was making a push for Marcellus Barnes. Now it seems like he's trending to Syracuse as well. So from a talent acquisition standpoint, I mean, Fran Brown, Coach Elijah Robinson, they're getting it going. And then now we're going to see, can they manage this program? Can Fran Brown be a head coach of a Power 5 program? But again, the first thing and the most important thing at the college football level, recruiting, relationship building, development, they've shown they can do that. If you're a Syracuse fan, I mean, not only immediately in 2024 do I think this team takes a step forward, but you have to be really excited about what the future and what the ceiling looks for the Syracuse program here.
100%. And again, to land that type of quarterback to kind of usher you into that era.
I agree.
We've talked, like, again, going back, Kyle McCord, when you hit that quarterback early in your transfer portal days, and if they can really steady the ship and not let things go off the rails, you have a chance to win enough games to where you start to build that momentum that you need. And if they can get something going in Syracuse, like, look out, because those two incredible coaches, incredible recruiters. Syracuse, again, it's a big school. It's a school that I think if you can get the football going over there, I think you can get behind it. So it's a program that if you can get rolling, I think you can be really, really tough in an ACC that you kind of starting to see some flux with some of the top schools.
Yeah, I'm fired up. And again, I think it gets good. And you kind of going back to that point, we'll cut it here. Like Coach Prime brought Shadur Sanders in, and they won a lot of games because they had good quarterback play. Lincoln Riley brought Caleb Williams in. Like it gives you the ability to win early. And when you can win early and build some of that momentum, that's when you're really excited if you're a Syracuse fan. For Syracuse, massive get for Kyle McCord. Again, a program I think we'll be talking a lot about in the next couple of weeks. Fran Brown, Elijah Robinson, they're going to get active. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. This is a program that's going to be very fun to talk about. Appreciate y'all rocking with us. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.